Welcome back to another episode on A Dose of Nikki. Thank you to my listeners for joining me every week to hear another topic or phrase. Have you ever heard of the idiom or expression to bend someone's ear? It is used primarily in a negative kind of way, like someone keeps talking about something they think is important, and you are pretty much irritated by this. Okay? So I personally was not familiar with this expression until this young author, Karen Najiri King, put a spin on it in her book called The Divine Spirits Speak. It's a guide for the bended ear. So Mrs. King's way of using this book to bend the reader's ear is used as a tool to guide us on raising children, love, it's a guide on marriage, patience, gratitude, and a lot more. But it's pretty much aligned with what we speak about on this podcast. So you can pick a chapter that you are interested in to get some deep-rooted knowledge. Check out the book on Amazon, Divine Spirits Speak, a guide for the bended ear, by Karen Najiri King. It seems like it's a wealth of information at our fingertips. Take advantage of it. Please show your support. Thank you. Now, this is a good segue into the topic of the week, compassion. You know, we take this word, compassion, for granted. And the reason I say that is because when I asked several people what the definition of compassion was, you should have heard the responses. And they sound confident too. They sound very confident. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, I don't even know if I really knew the true meaning, but I'm going to give you the definition of it. First question is, what is the definition of compassion? I want you to think about it. What is it to you? It means to suffer together. Oh, right, I know. That seems weird, right? Very weird. It is a feeling that arises when you are faced with another person's suffering and feel motivated or inclined to relieve the suffering. Oh, to suffer together. It is a feeling that arises when you are faced with another person's suffering and feel motivated, inclined to relieve the suffering. Now that is deep. Compassion. That's what compassion is. And that means if you are carrying 2 bags that weigh 10 pounds each in total, excuse me, and I come along and help you carry 1 bag that weighs 5 pounds, we now are carrying the load together. We now suffer, and I put my finger in quotes when I say that, together. You get it? It's more visual that way. It honestly, it troubles me when someone suffers. It does. Whether it is physically or emotionally, it bothers me. And I think emotional suffering impacts me more because I cannot see it. You understand? It's not a tangible or physical thing. It's silent and can be deadly. And for that very reason, we as human beings should have compassion for each other to help with that emotional suffering. I think if we showed more compassion for each other, the world would operate differently. Not to say that there would not be bumps in the road. There would be less loneliness, for sure. Yeah, it would. People would not feel as alone as they do today. Ponder on that. You know, many of us grew up having to show strength all the time, all the time. Even when we did not want to, you're told, stop crying. Or don't you cry. Don't you even start. Don't you even think about it. Oh, yeah, as a kid. No whining. Don't want to hear you whining. Don't you whine. I don't want to hear it. Or show any signs of being weak. Those are signs of being weak to some, especially if you are a male. You can't do any of those things because you might be perceived as being weak. In many cultures, it's weak to display that level of vulnerability. So, the compassion that should be offered isn't always readily available. Why? Why? Because the person that should be on the receiving end of compassion could be putting on an act, fronting, and actually is suffering. You get it? That person could be missing out on receiving compassion because they've been taught, stop crying, don't whine, don't want to hear you whining, hold it in, be strong. They're not able to express themselves and let others know that compassion is required. You understand? So the person who would or could offer compassion don't, because they are not aware there is a need. Compassion is something we should give and receive. It's a healthy way of feeling and being supported. It's healthy. Yeah, it is. Now, I know someone who lost their son who was very young. Yeah, it was heartbreaking. And as a parent, it is unfathomable to experience. Most parents expect to leave this earth or transition before their children, right? And unfortunately, sometimes life do not go as expected, and the parent must bury their child for a multitude of reasons. And when that tragic event lead to the loss of her son's life, it was devastating. It was. What could I do? Offer her compassion. It was my opportunity to offer her compassion. And I'm not really sure if I was successful at doing this. I'm not sure. At the time, I really didn't know if I was offering compassion. I was confused and did not want to add to her pain. So instead of, maybe I was offering compassion, but really I might have been being a little too cautious. And of what? And I'm not really quite sure what I was being cautious about, but I felt the cautiousness in me. You know what I mean? And this is a woman that offered others her strength. And during this time, I'm not sure if she could truly deal with her pain, loss or the emptiness she was feeling. And how could I offer her compassion when I did not know that was what she needed? How could I do that? I didn't know if she needed compassion. I didn't know what it was. And in hindsight, I realized that is what I needed to offer her. Not to confuse it with empathy now, as I could not relate to that level of loss. You understand? But however, I could sympathize, feel the pain and her suffering as a parent. If the pain was present, I should have let her know some way, somehow that I felt it too. Some way, somehow, I felt it too. In my mind, I did not want to add to her pain. I wanted to be strong for her, you know? And in me acting strong, I think it was more likely appearing to be detached from the situation, if that makes sense. So, my friends, now that you truly know the meaning of compassion, I say we need to embrace it. Ask yourself, do you offer compassion when it is needed? And if not, you should. It's the right thing to do. Be compassionate. Be compassionate. If the person you need to offer compassion to is crying, and you feel like crying, do not hold back. Cry too. That's being compassionate. If the person is telling you about something that is hurtful, devastating to them, that made them drop to their knees because they feel weak, don't stand over them. Get on your knees right beside them. Show them compassion. That's what you do. Right next to them. Get on your knees right there. And you come side to side with them and offer them compassion. If they are standing there in front of you, pouring their heart out to you, don't just stand there looking at them. Extend your hand and hold their hand in yours. Hold it. Or even better yet, put your arms around them and offer your compassion. That's what we do. The word itself is warm, emotional, and rewarding, all rolled up into a box with a nice bow on top of this precious gift called compassion. Treat compassion like a gift that you offer generously. Don't fear it, embrace it. See just how your compassion can contribute to changing this sometimes cold-hearted world we live in today. Be understanding, not judgmental. Be compassionate. Until next time, on A Dose of Nikki, be well, my people. Be well.